From your local election headquarters, welcome to the Congressional District 3 debate. Democratic candidate and businesswoman Susie Lee from Las Vegas and Republican candidate and businessman Tarkanian, also from Las Vegas, go head-to-head in our debate. From your local election headquarters and the 8 News Now studios in Las Vegas, the Congressional District 3 debate starts now.
Welcome to our Congressional District 3 debate between Republican Tarkanian and Democrat Susie Lee. I'm Steve Sebelius, and my Politics Now co-host Patrick Walker and I will be the moderators.
Tarkanian is an attorney and businessman who is making his 6th run for office, and philanthropist and businesswoman Susie Lee is running for Congress for the 2nd time. We want to extend a big thank you to both for agreeing to the debate. They both met our criteria, which includes raising at least $50,000, at least $12,500 of that from Nevadans, and having a campaign office and website. You can see the full list of criteria on LasVegasNow.com. The format for this debate will include questions for both candidates to answer, individual questions for each candidate, and closing statements.
We're going to start with questions for both candidates. They'll each have 60 seconds to answer. That is followed by a 30-second rebuttal for each candidate. When your time is up, you will hear this bell. If either moderator asks a follow-up question, the candidates will have 30 seconds to answer that as well. There are no opening statements, so let's jump right into it. The anniversary of the October 1st shooting is less than 2 weeks away. It was a moment that brought Las Vegans together, but also put the debate about gun violence on the forefront of American minds. Both of you have different ideas about how to solve gun violence. Here's what each of you said after the October 1st shooting.
I'm for banning bump stocks, reducing the size of magazines, and most importantly, getting weapons out of the hands of dangerous individuals.
I'm going to go there. Yeah, I will go there and try to find whatever's best solution we can, gun control, whatever otherwise, to minimize these type of activities within the framework of our Constitution.
Tarkanian won the card draw, so he will answer first. Mr. Tarkanian, name the one piece of federal gun legislation that's your top priority to pass, and tell us why.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank Channel 8 for having this debate. I think it's very important for the viewers, and particularly the residents of Congressional District 3, to be able to listen to both candidates, be able to see what we have to say policy-wise outside of those 30-second TV ads that too much control these type of elections. So thank you very much. We've offered to do 3 debates and 3 town halls. We look forward to doing more after today. I believe that we should have a universal background check, maybe an exception for immediate family members, like where a father is giving something to a teenager son. But there should be background checks for anybody who's going to purchase weapons. And that's one of the things that differentiates me from some of the other Republicans that have run for office. In fact, it's caused me to be downgraded by the NRA. But I think it's a common sense solution. We believe that everybody has a constitutional right to bear arms, but there should be a background check to make sure dangerous felons and people with mental illnesses do not have control of those guns.
Thank you, Mr. Tarkanian. Ms. Lee, what's your one top priority for federal gun legislation and why?
First of all, thank you both for having me here today to discuss these issues. You know, October 1st, I think, changed this community and forever. I picked my son, who's 13 years old, up from school the following day. He got in the car and started crying, saying, you know, this guy didn't even know who he was shooting. And as a mother, I couldn't say to him, it's okay, I can protect you, it won't happen again. You know, we've seen 33,000 people killed by guns in our country. I believe in the Second Amendment right. We have a strong culture of gun, you know, people who like to hunt. I respect that people want to protect their families, you know, but the issue is, how do we make the Second Amendment safer? I agree the first piece of legislation should be universal background checks, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and people who are mentally unstable and shouldn't have it, which has been passed here by Nevada voters.
Thank you. Mr. Tarkanian, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, I'm glad that my opponent agrees with this common sense principle, and I certainly agree with it. And I will say that this was living in this community for 45 years, grown up here, and we've seen some really great events here and some really tough things. Nothing was worse than that shooting. It devastated this community in a lot of ways. But at the same time, we came together, we showed what kind of community we are, and that we're all Vegas strong, and I'm very proud to be a part of this.
Ms. Lee, 30 seconds for you.
You know, there's been a slight change in my opponent's opinion on guns. Basically, in his previous elections, he has talked about not even having background checks and keeping guns out of the hands of people who would be on our no-fly list. So there's been a little change in a position here. I've been pretty steadfast that we need to have universal background checks, and I backed the initiative that we supported in Nevada here 2 years ago.
Let's move on to immigration now. Immigration dominated the 2016 presidential election. Many people believe it put President Trump in the White House, and it has dominated local races here in Nevada. So we're going to ask each of you about your border security plans. According to Reuters, a Department of Homeland Security internal report in 2017 pegged the cost of Trump's border security plan at $21.6 billion. So, Ms. Lee, you're first on this one. Don't we need to have a stronger barrier at the southern border, if for no other reason than to dissuade terrorism? And how much would you be willing to spend to accomplish border security, increase border security at the southern border?
You know, immigration is the one issue to me that most exemplifies the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. We've had bipartisan solutions for comprehensive immigration reform on the table over and over again, and it's never been brought to vote because of leadership on both sides of the aisle. You know, I believe in strong borders, and which is why I'm proud that the Nevada Coalition of Law Enforcement has endorsed my campaign representing over 10,000 law enforcement officers here in the state of Nevada. I think we can have cost-effective border security, and we certainly need to do it, and it needs to be the first part of comprehensive immigration reform. I don't necessarily believe that a wall all the way along the southern border is necessarily the answer. We can do it with fences. We can do it with securing our ports of entry as well.
Mr. Tarkanian, you are a fiscal conservative, so we talk about that cost, about $21.5 billion. Exactly how much are you willing to spend on a border security wall or a plan like that?
First of all, I'm going to have to correct my opponent, and we may have to do this regularly throughout this debate. The no-fly ban for guns is done without giving anybody due process rights. It's a violation of our Second Amendment. She should be in favor of that if she believes in the Constitution. I believe it's very important to secure our borders. It's one of the most important things our country needs to do. In fact, it's one of the main purposes of our federal government is to defend the safety of our citizens from outside forces. I don't know what the cost is going to be. A wall is going to be important in certain areas. It's not going to be feasible in other areas, but we have technology that can fully secure the borders. If we need more Border Patrol agents or other type of ways to make sure we protect who's coming in our country and what type of products, you didn't mention that, we certainly want to stop all these drugs that are coming in our country. So it's vital, vital, vital to have secure borders, and we have to pay whatever cost it is with the most feasible approach possible to make sure that's done.
Ms. Lee, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal, but would you also, can you give us a number of what you'd be willing to spend for some of those at the border?
Listen, you know, our security as a country, I'm not willing to put a price tag on it. I think that we need to look at cost-effective ways of doing it. You know, again, we can use drone technology, we can use fences, we can use tighter security at ports of entry. There's a slew. You know, I don't have an estimate right now, but I don't want to put a price on securing our country.
And Mr. Tarkanian, you also have 30 seconds to rebut. Are you comfortable with that number at 21 plus billion?
That number is based upon a full border wall, which I don't think is feasible, as I mentioned in my earlier conversations. But we need to secure borders with whatever means we have and with whatever cost it takes. That's reasonable. Unfortunately, when you talk about the comprehensive immigration reform, my opponent talked about that part is it agreed upon. None of it talked about securing our borders and making sure we stop illegal people coming in and illegal drugs coming in. And that's the most important thing for our federal government.
Okay, thank you both. Stay with us. Our CD3 debate. We'll be right back.
Majority Forward is responsible for the content of this ad.
Welcome back to our Congressional District 3 debates.
Well, funding for the Clark County School District has been an ongoing issue here in Southern Nevada. This school year, according to the district, $341 million of funding is from federal sources, and $136 million of that is for free and reduced lunches. So, Mr. Tarkanian, you can answer this question first with a minute to reply. As a member of Congress, what programs would you vote for to ensure that children who are living in poverty have the same educational opportunities as everyone else?
And that's a great question. That's one of the most important questions facing our residents in Congressional District 3. I believe very strongly in school choice, that people that are at the lower level of the economy scale can still pick and choose which is the best school system for their children to participate in. Unfortunately now, only the real wealthy people. My opponent, she's able to send her children over to private boarding school, spend $75,000 a year for it. I'm able to send my kids to private school, cost $400 a month, but we're fortunate enough to do that because we care, like every other parent, so much for the well-being and the education of their children. But what about the people that can't afford it? Why aren't they given that same opportunity? They all pay taxes. They all care just as much for their children. So the top priority for me will get school choice passed federally so every child, no matter what economic scale they're on, can go to the school that's best for them.
Ms. Lee, you can answer next. What programs would you vote for to ensure that children living in poverty have the same educational opportunities as everyone else?
You know, I've had a strong career here in Nevada working with our most impoverished students, helping them have the opportunity to be successful in school. For the past 6 years, I've been the board president of Communities and Schools, part of the nation's leading dropout prevention program. And under my leadership, we've grown sixfold, and today we now serve 64,000 students, getting a graduation rate of 87%. This is an example of a smart public-private partnership that utilizes, each principal has a decision to use part of their money that they get for helping impoverished students, which is Title I funding. And we go in and help students with basic needs, food, clothing, health care, et cetera. It's a smart program and it gets great results. And that's a program that I'd fight for to make sure that all students have that. And with respect to choice, I'm not asking taxpayers to pay for my choice to send my kids to a private school, but I've been fighting so kids can have an opportunity at good education for 20 years.
Mr. Tarkanian, you've got 30 seconds to reply.
This is a clear distinction between my opponent and I. She would rather take money from the Clark County School District and the federal government to fund these special projects like that she's running right now. For example, the nonprofit she's talking about, it takes $1.6 million from the school budget to fund their programs. They pay 10% of that to fund the CEO. I think the money should go in the classroom, to the teachers, their assistants, the books. Money should be put in the classroom where it belongs, not in these special projects like my opponent is talking about.
Ms. Lee, 30 seconds.
Wow. This is a man who got a $17 million bailout by the federal government. And not only that, the programs that I fund are a public-private partnership. We get results. 87% of the students that we serve under Communities and Schools graduate. Many of those students would have a graduation rate of about 10%. So I've proven that I can roll up my sleeves, take on the big problems, and get results while you've conned everyone you've come in contact with.
Mr. Tarkanian, a follow-up question for you. You mentioned school choice in your initial answer. How much money from the federal government would you be willing to put behind that program?
Well, first of all, we got to respond to her. Again, she's going to lie to the public like she is in her ads. There was no bailout from the federal government. You should know that, Mr. Sebelius. You even had to write the, whatever you want to call it, correction in your article. It was from the insurance companies because my family was defrauded from a developer and a banker. We were defrauded, so the con is really in her. She ran the only other nonprofit she talks about, took $5 million from the city and the county, this MASH program. She does really well running nonprofits when the government pays for her profits and including all of the salaries that she pays to her employees and her CEO.
All right. Ms. Lee, can you tell us how much money would you like to spend on childhood education and poverty programs? 30 seconds to reply.
Listen, 1 in 5 children live in poverty in our country. 66% of students in the Clark County School District are on free and reduced lunch. You know, I believe that early childhood education is a good return on investment dollar, and I'd like to see more investment with that. I can't really put a price tag on, you know, exactly what the total will be, but we have a serious poverty problem here in Nevada. I've proven that I can solve that problem with the organizations that I've run.
We have many more issues to get to, so we'll leave it there. Stay with us. Our CD3 debate continues after this.
News Now.
Welcome back to our Congressional District 3 debate.
Well, both of you say that you want to bring small businesses and jobs back here to Nevada to diversify the state's economy. Mr. Tarkanian, you're first on this one. Which specific federal policies would you propose to accomplish this?
Well, I think we're seeing that right now with some of the policies that President Trump is implementing. We're seeing a reduction in the burdensome regulations that allow small businesses to start up and expand. We're seeing a more fair tax system, particularly to corporations, so that they can go out and compete. We're seeing the greatest economic turnaround in my generation, and here in Southern Nevada we have $50 billion in new construction projects planned here within the Clark County itself. It's because of these type of policies that are expanding the business. The one area that I think we need to do a better job for is to correct the problems Dodd-Frank did when they eliminated the community banks, or at least significantly reduced them. The community banks are necessary for small businesses in their communities because they're the ones that lend to the mom and pop organizations, or the ones that want to expand. So I'd like to get back to really putting some resources into the community bank system.
Ms. Lee, same question to you with a minute to respond. Which specific federal policies would you propose to bring small businesses and jobs to Nevada to diversify our economy?
You know, diversifying our economy has been an issue that I've been concerned about ever since I moved here 25 years ago, which is why I've gotten invested in our community in helping nonprofits. Basically, I think it starts obviously with education. And, you know, for every dollar that we as a state send to Washington, we only get 66 cents back in return. So I think we need to be laser focused on making sure we're getting education and research dollars back here from the federal government to support sectors that we need to advance. We always have a deficit in teachers. We need to grow our own teachers. We know that Nevada State College is building an addition to help us with that. Healthcare, we're underserviced in healthcare. We also have opportunities in green energy, drone technology, as well as cybersecurity and IT. And so those are areas that I'd focus on, bringing education and research dollars back here to support those businesses.
Mr. Tarkanian, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
I think Nevada has a great opportunity to be the leader in renewable energy, and this is where my opponent and I disagree. She would, her policies would make Yucca Mountain a storage facility for nuclear spent fuel. I think if we work with the federal government and we turn it into a recycling facility, you're going to recycle the nuclear spent fuel, be able to sell it nationally, internationally, but at the same time, bring in the wind, solar, and geothermal resources that we have here. You can turn Yucca Mountain into the leading energy renewal facility in the entire world, and it'll create more jobs and it'll create more money for the people of Nevada.
Ms. Lee, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal as well.
Well, first of all, we don't disagree on investing in clean energy. I've been very clear that I support, and I think Nevada should be a leader in that. This is different than your earlier proposal for Yucca Mountain, which was turning it into a reprocessing facility, which means transporting waste on our roads and railways, which honestly, to me, is an economic killer for our state.
Well, there's more issues just ahead. Stay with us. The CD3 debate continues right after this.
Responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to our Congressional District 3 debate. For this next part of the debate, we will ask the candidates individual questions. So here are the rules. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer. The other candidate will not have a chance to rebut these answers. And if Steve or I ask a follow-up question, the candidate will have 30 seconds to answer that. So, Mr. Tarkanian, we'll begin with you. You have said that the federal government regulations hurt small business people here in Nevada. Can you name 3 federal regulations you would eliminate and why?
Look, first of all, I need to again correct one of the statements my opponent made. Recycling is reprocessing. It's the same thing. I've been consistent upon it all the time. And furthermore, nuclear spent fuel has been transported through the states of Nevada for decades. There hasn't been an accident yet. I didn't say regulations hurt small businesses. I said burdensome and unnecessary regulations hurt small businesses. I've gone throughout this community and throughout the state before. And anytime you talk to small business, they talk about how long and how difficult it is to get through the red tape of getting the businesses started. For example, I had a gentleman up in out here that started a manufacturing plant here, and he said the regulators would come in, they would search every wire, every spark plug, every thing in their entire plant, and would cause them to shut down their business. It would cause them a lot of money to try to cover all these type of things. Why aren't we working together to try to make the place, the employment area safe, but at the same time feasible for businesses to work and expand?
Okay, with a hard 30 seconds to follow up, are there any specific regulations that you would like to see changed?
Well, if you would like to give me an example of some of them, we can do some. President Trump has already eliminated 5 regulations for every one that's being passed now. There's so many of them out there. If we want to discuss each one, we can see which ones are reasonable or not. Common sense would tell you which ones are reasonable. I firmly believe we need to protect the safety of our employees and at the same time protect our environment. But at the same time, you shouldn't be putting unnecessary burdens on businesses when it isn't having a positive effect for it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tarkanian.
Susie Lee, you're next. Based on what you've seen thus far, do you think that there is enough evidence to impeach President Trump? And based on what you've seen, would you vote for the impeachment of President Trump if it came up and you were elected?
You know, if I get elected, I hope that voters understand what I've done here in this community and why I'm running. And if I have the honor of serving Congressional District 3, I think that impeachment discussions would be a distraction. I think that, especially if we have a majority, I'd like to get to work on issues that are affecting Nevada families here, reducing health care costs, improving our education system, and economic development, and by that I mean an economy that works for everyone. Those are the issues that are facing Nevadans. That being said, I think the investigation should continue. I think it's incredibly dangerous that Russia interfered in our elections, and I think we should have an investigation and allow it to continue. But I'd like to really get to work on solving problems facing working families here.
And just a real quick follow-up with a few seconds to respond. There are many members of your party in Congress who have called for the impeachment of President Trump. Do you disagree with them?
Yeah, I'm not always with extreme factions of my party on certain issues, and which is why I'm proud that No Labels has given me the seal of approval. No Labels is an organization that supports candidates that are dedicated on bringing Congress together to solve
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching the first half of our Congressional District 3 debate. The second half will be next Saturday, September 29th at 4:30 p.m.
Topics include health care and who the candidates would like to see as their party's leader in the House.